Joining me right now is Republican Senator Tom Cotton of Arkansas. Senator, great to see you tonight. Thanks very much for being here. You know, it's just extraordinary to hear Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez spewing out these things, and yet there's no censorship about calling Republicans white supremacists.
I know, Maria. She's a little excitable in that clip, but that's not all that unusual for her. You know, it doesn't help much to have that kind of rhetoric. We're trying to work together to get kids back to school or people back to work or the American people vaccinated. I think that should be our focus rather than the bomb throwing back and forth from one end of the Congress to the other.
It has been an extraordinary first 10 days, Senator. You're seeing all of these executive orders out of the Biden administration. Assess the situation for us. Tell us where you find you're seeing the progress or unity, as Joe Biden has talked about so much.
Well, unfortunately, Maria, we've seen some talk from Joe Biden on the inaugural stand last week about unity, but he's governed from the hard left over this last 7-day period. Just look at what he's done with immigration, introduced an immigration bill that would give amnesty to 15 million illegal immigrants that would flood our country with guest workers at a time when 10 million Americans are still out of work, essentially stopped all enforcement at the border, held up the Ali Ali Oxenfree sign that's going to create a surge at the border in the weeks and the months ahead of people about whom we have no knowledge of their public health risk or their public safety risk. Well, look at what he's done with energy policy, ending the Keystone Pipeline, laying off more than 10,000 hardworking Americans in good-paying blue-collar union jobs, rejoining the Paris Climate Accord, or empowering people like John Kerry to try to kill even more jobs, and then telling these people, well, you can go get a job in solar power or computer coding, something that's better for you to do anyway. Nothing could be more condescending than what we've seen out of the Biden administration as it relates to blue-collar jobs in this country.
What's your take on the teachers union appearing to be taking over in terms of the Department of Education? How do you expect the Department of Education to change with Biden's new ideas there?
Well, with Betsy DeVos gone, it's going to change much for the worse, Maria. I mean, look, Joe Biden and his entire team has said for a year, we follow the science. We're the party of science. Just tell us what the science says. Joe Biden's own CDC said the science is clear that schools are not sources of major transmissions of the virus. Yet his own chief of staff goes out that very same day and says, no, we can't go back to school. That's because Joe Biden and the Democrats are more focused on rewarding their political clients like teachers unions than they are helping kids. Schools have one purpose, that is to teach kids, not to employ adults. And as we've seen in Arkansas, where we've been in school since last fall, kids can go to school with proper safety precautions. There are not major sources of transmissions, and the teachers and the staff can teach them safely. That's what we need to do all across the country. That's what the government should be encouraging our schools to do, and why we've spent so much money over the last year to help them do that.
Well, that's a good point, because in the CARES Act, you had $30.75 billion education stabilization fund. That provided $13.5 billion for the elementary and secondary school emergency relief fund. And then in the Coronavirus Response and Appropriations Act of 2021, an additional $82 billion through the Education Stabilization Fund, providing $54 billion for the elementary and secondary emergency fund. What is this money being used for if teachers refuse to go back to school, Senator?
Yeah, well, in Arkansas, they've used it for basic mitigation techniques, for plexiglass shields, or to extend teachers' hours so they can teach both in person and virtual while giving them off a day here and there, to make sure that everyone has masks, to make sure that kids who have to study at home because maybe they or their parents have some kind of disease or illness that makes them more susceptible to the virus, have the right kinds of technology. That's one reason why it's largely been a success in Arkansas, as it has been in so many other states, to have kids back in school since last fall. Look, it's not perfect. We all want to get beyond the pandemic. We want kids to be able to learn together and play together, to sit together in classrooms, to go to the cafeteria, to have lunch together. Not all of that is happening right now, but kids can be in school safely. If we can do it in Arkansas, we can do it all across the country. We should do it all across the country, and the Biden administration should be encouraging it, not discouraging it.
What about foreign affairs, Senator? Your thoughts on what was said and done yesterday in terms of potentially a new arms deal with Saudi Arabia, as well as talking about the United Arab Emirates, questioning whether or not these Abraham Accords are going to get impacted. We talked with Secretary Pompeo earlier in this week, and there was so much progress made in terms of the normalization with Israel. Is that in jeopardy at this point?
Well, the Biden administration says they want to maintain the Abraham Accords, but part of those accords is that we would help countries like Saudi Arabia and Bahrain and the United Arab Emirates defend themselves from Iranian aggression. But just like the Obama administration, it would appear that the Biden administration is looking to curry favor and grant unilateral concessions to the Ayatollahs at the risk of our partners in the Arab world and Israel. It's kind of like what Joe Biden did with the New START treaty with Russia. A straightforward, unilateral, no concessions granted extension of the New START treaty was Vladimir Putin's highest priority. Joe Biden gave it to him on his first full day in office without getting any concessions, without getting any assurances, without addressing all of Russia's nuclear weapons that don't fall in that treaty, without addressing the fact that when you add China and Russia together, we are at the risk of nuclear overmatch in the years ahead.
And we haven't even discussed or heard anything about U.S.-China policy, have we, Senator, which is the issue that you've pointed to umpteen times as being the #1 threat this country faces?
Yeah, very, very little. In fact, several of Joe Biden's nominees won't even commit to keeping Huawei on the denied entity list so they can't steal our technology and use it against us. That's very troubling.
All right, we will leave it there. Senator, we'll continue the conversation. Thanks so much. Senator Tom Cotton joining us tonight.